start with our CME by East Delhi Gynae Forum. We have 2 lectures today. First lecture is, the topic is hyperprolactinemia, no longer an enigma, by Dr. Deepti Nag. And we have the chairpersons, Dr. Jyoti Bhaskar, Dr. Vanna Gupta, and Dr. Renu Chawla. Dr. Deepti Nag is a senior Obs and Gynae consultant in East Delhi. She's the director of Mother and Child Center. And she is a senior consultant at Max Paparganj and Vaishali, and she's vice president Delhi Gynae Forum East presently. And ma'am's area of expertise is infertility, high risk pregnancy, and menopause. Ma'am has been awarded with various awards. And we have the chairpersons, Dr. Vanna Gupta ma'am. She's a vice president of East Delhi Gynae Forum. I'm a senior consultant Max Hospital Paparganj. And Dr. Jyoti Bhaskar ma'am, our president East Delhi Gynae Forum. Ma'am is a principal consultant at Apollo Cradle Hospital, Indrapuram. And Dr. Renu Chawla ma'am, she's an alumni of Lady Harding, and she's a joint secretary of Delhi Gynae Forum East, and she's practicing since 91 with keen interest in high risk obstetrics. Welcome, ma'am. So I'll stop share.
Dr. Poonam has to stop sharing.
I've stopped share. So Dr. Deepti ma'am, you can start sharing your screen.
Ji. No, I'm in a webinar.
Yes, ma'am. We can see your presentation.
Yes.
There's a small button, ribbon is coming at the below where stop sharing is written. Just next to it is the hide button. Just click on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Done.
Okay. So, good evening, friends. My topic for today's talk is hyperprolactinemia, and I hope by the end of my talk, it is no longer an enigma. We are aware of the anterior and posterior lobes of the pituitary. Prolactin is secreted from the posterior pituitary. Besides its action on the breast, of which we are all aware, it also binds to specific receptors in the liver and gonads. It is cleared by the liver and kidney. And this is a point to be noted by all of us, because when we consider the pathological reasons for increased prolactin levels, kidney and liver diseases are also counted amongst them. The major stimulating factor for prolactin secretion is TRH, and that is why we find a high prevalence of hypothyroidism in patients with raised prolactin levels. The major inhibiting factor is dopamine. And as I go further down my slides, we'll come across a long list of drugs, especially central nervous system acting drugs, which lower the dopamine levels and lead to increased prolactin levels. So these are all things to be kept in mind while taking the history. So estrogen also improves prolactin secretion by both ways, enhancing the effects of TRH and by inhibiting the effects of dopamine. However, the main function of prolactin is very simple. We are all aware it stimulates the growth of mammary tissue and produces and secrete milks into the alveoli. So it has both mammogenic as well as lactogenic functions. Prevalence, it is prevalent in both male and female when the focus is on infertility. For women, I would like to broaden the term from infertility to reproductive diseases. We find the prevalence of 9% in women with adult onset amenorrhea, and when we talk of polycystic ovarian syndrome, then the prevalence goes to 11.9% when only the Rotterdam criteria is kept in mind for diagnosis. But when we include the other diagnostic criteria, the prevalence of hyperprolactinemia in patients with PCOS increases to almost 28%. Hyperprolactinemia is definitely associated with infertility. This is a beautiful diagrammatic representation of how increased serum prolactins lead to decreased kisspeptin expressions, which in turn reduces the GnRH release, and in turn leads to reduced pituitary gonadotrophin, that is LH and FSH, leading to hypogonadism, infertility, and amenorrhea. Now, prolactin is inhibited. The secretion is increased by estrogen, but hypersecretion of prolactin inhibits estrogen synthesis. So it is a two-way cycle. I have just mentioned about the role of TRH in increasing the prolactin secretion. And many articles and studies have shown there is a definite biochemical association of both hyperprolactinemia with hypothyroidism in infertile women. If you keep this picture in mind, while you have a patient with suspicious, we are suspecting a prolactin is involved, if you have this picture in your mind, things will be very easy. The blue signals indicate an inhibitory signal and the red arrows indicate a stimulatory signal. So TRH and estrogen, they stimulate, and dopamine inhibits the release of prolactin. So what is hyperprolactinemia? It is a condition of elevated serum prolactin levels. This could be physiological, this could be pathological, or it could be idiopathic in origin. Coming to the physiological causes. Ovulation, we are all aware of it. Breastfeeding, pregnancy, stress, exercise, nipple manipulation, and anterior chest wall injuries. Coming to the pathological causes of raised prolactin levels, we just talked about involvement of kidney and liver. Primary hypothyroidism, PCOS, seizures, then we have adenomas which secrete prolactin. Coming to the pharmacological causes of raised prolactin, and quite a number of antiemetics, opioids, antidepressants, antipsychotics, and antihypertensives are involved in raising the prolactin levels. Friends, times have changed. We are having more and more women in the perimenopausal age group coming to us with complaint of mood swings, sadness, feeling of crying, getting angry. And many of us are regularly prescribing antidepressants and antipsychotics and anti-anxiolytics. So it is almost a routine to prescribe alprazolam, sertraline, fluoxetine, amitriptyline. When you prescribe these drugs, please be careful. If she comes back to you with a complaint of galacturia, you know what to do. One of the very positive effects of a drug, metoclopramide, which all of us have used in our practice, is in a lactating woman when she complains of decreased breast milk flow. Because metoclopramide leads to sustained hyperprolactinemia, there is a positive response. Again, a beautiful diagrammatic representation of how in different clinical situations prolactin is raised. Hypothyroidism and adrenal insufficiency, it is the TRH which has a stimulatory effect. Prolactinomas, they directly increase the prolactin secretion. Chronic kidney disease and liver diseases also directly increase the prolactin secretion because they decrease the other effects. We will be talking shortly about what is the macroprolactin. Coming to pregnancy and PCOS, it is the raised estrogen levels. Then medications, we've already talked about, they decrease the dopamine level. So once the inhibitory effect is removed, the prolactin secretion increases. Then chest wall stimulation, breastfeeding, again their effect is via dopamine. What about the prolactin levels? In a non-pregnant woman, it is less than 25, which is taken as the cutoff generally. In a pregnant woman, the levels are very high. 400 is also considered normal, especially in the third trimester. In men, it is less than 20 micrograms. Looking at the prolactin levels, we can actually come to a probable diagnosis. If the level is from just above normal to up to 100, there is usually involvement of a drug intake. It could be simply idiopathic. Microadenoma, when the levels are from 100 to 200 and 200 and beyond, we suspect a macroadenoma. These are some of the tips which I came across while I was preparing my slides. Initially, there was a time when we used to suggest 3 pool samples for measurement of prolactin levels, no longer recommended. A single measurement of serum prolactin above the upper limit is enough to confirm the diagnosis. It is important that we instruct a patient to go on day 2 or 3 of start of a cycle. Why? Because in a normal physiological manner, the prolactin levels rise during ovulation and in the luteal phase. So in case she has gone during mid-cycle, the levels will be raised and we will be confused. Fasting per se is not mandatory, but if the patient has had a meal and gone for a prolactin testing and the levels are barely on the plus side, you can get a repeat sample done in a fasting state. Prolactin levels, we know, fluctuate throughout the day. They start rising in the evening, they're highest in early morning. So again, instruction must be given to the patient that she must go 3 to 4 hours after she has woken up. These are some important points which we must advise the patients when we recommend prolactin levels. Now, there are certain conditions where the prolactin levels could be either falsely high or falsely low and again confusing us. So just a short word about what is a macroprolactin and what is the hook effect. Prolactin we know is a monomer. When this prolactin gets attached to antibodies, in particular anti-prolactin autoantibodies, it forms a polymer. Now this polymer when compared to monomer, the size is very big. It is up to 150 to 170 kilodaltons compared to 23 kilodaltons of a monomer. So what happens because of this increased size? There is decreased prolactin clearance. Now, these complexes are immunologically detectable, but they are biologically inactive. So they do not cause any clinical abnormality. But since they raise the prolactin levels, their presence raises the prolactin levels, it becomes a misdiagnosis. And we start treating the patient as a patient of hyperprolactinemia. So when you come across a patient with raised prolactin levels, but a detailed history and a clinical examination gives you no clue, please think that there might be presence of macroprolactins. In that case, get a repeat test done from the lab, this time instructing them to pre-treat the serum with polyethylene glycol so as to precipitate the macroprolactin. So these are some things which I found very interesting. Raised prolactin, but otherwise she's got no symptoms. Think of prolactin. And what is the hook effect? This is observed when the serum prolactin concentration is extremely high, as in cases of some giant prolactinomas. But what happens? These high amount of circulating prolactin, they cause the antibody saturation in the immunoradiometric assay, so leading to artificially low results. So it has been recommended that the hook effect must be included in all new patients with large pituitary adenomas who have normal or mildly elevated prolactin levels. And to overcome this, you instruct the lab to perform a serum dilution of 1:100 to get the correct prolactin levels. Again, a diagrammatic representation of, I mentioned about macroprolactin being big in size, giving a false positive result, and increased levels of prolactin giving you a false negative result. So what are the signs symptoms of hyperprolactinemia? In females, we all are aware of galacturia. Then, of course, there is amenorrhea, there is oligoamenorrhea, anovulatory infertility. Please remember that and keep it in your mind. Then the pressure effects because of a pituitary adenoma, it could be visual symptoms, it could be headache. Also very important is that in a patient with amenorrhea and hypoestrogenism, osteoporosis is aggravated. So such patient might just come to you with bone pain. In males, infertility, erectile dysfunction, decreased libido, gynecomastia, galacturia, and then of course there is the pituitary adenomas with visual symptoms and headaches. So now you have a patient. She might just come to you with a simple short complaint of a decreased libido. Do things on the lines of a raised prolactin. She might come to you with increased body weight. It is not always that there is a familial disposition or you think on the lines of PCOS. Do think of getting her prolactin levels down. As I mentioned, if the patient you find or you are suspicious of the degree of bone loss is not matching with her age, think on the lines of raised prolactin levels. So how would you evaluate a patient? You've got her prolactin levels done, they are high. You've taken a detailed history. A menstrual history is very, very important. Then you've taken a detailed drug history. Then you look for any symptoms of high prolactin. By that I mean, does she complain of a headache or there any mass effect, any cranial nerve palsy effect, any visual defect? Get a pituitary MRI done. Rule out the presence of a prolactinoma. Look for symptoms of potential causes. I have mentioned about liver and kidney involvement. She could be pregnant. Now this patient has irregular periods. She's unaware that the missed period or the irregularity is not because of something else. She's actually pregnant. So get a beta HCG done, get a thyroid profile done, get a kidney and a liver function test done. Suppose all these tests are normal. Clinically, there is nothing, but the levels are high. Again, I repeat, think of on the lines of a macroprolactin being present. A very interesting case. You have a patient, she comes to you with nipple discharge. You immediately jump the gun and you think, yes, this is galacturia, you get the prolactin levels done. But they're normal. What do you do? Get a microscopic examination of the nipple discharge. If there is a non-galacturia discharge, think seriously in the lines of intraductal papilloma, a mammillary duct ectasia, even a fibrocystic breast disease can present with a nipple discharge and a normal prolactin levels. However, if the microscopy shows fat globules, that is galacturia, a non-puerperal galacturia. Get her beta ICG levels done, get a detailed thyroid profile done, get her kidney and liver function test done. So now you have a patient with nipple discharge, normal prolactin levels, but the TSH levels are high. She just needs a thyroid hormone replacement therapy. The second option is the TSH levels are normal. The prolactin levels are just barely high. Get an MRI done. And third situation, the TSH is normal, prolactin levels are absolutely again normal. Get a detailed menstrual history. She has regular menses. Do nothing, just reassure her. But do keep her under observation. If, however, she says that her periods are not regular, you have to get an MRI done. Just a few words about prolactinoma. These are functioning pituitary tumors which secrete prolactin, and they're classified as per their size. It could be microprolactinomas are one which are less than 1 centimeter, and when more than 1 centimeter, they are macroprolactinomas. They are found majorly in women, and microadenomas are found in premenopausal women. Macroadenomas are found in postmenopausal women and in men. So how do you manage a patient with raised prolactin levels? Friends, please do not chase the prolactin levels. What has she come to you with? Infertility? Restore her fertility. If you have to give her an ovulation-inducing agent like a clomiphene or a letrozole, go ahead, do it. It will not affect her prolactin levels. If she's come to you with irregular cycles with amenorrhea, you wish to put her on COCs, go ahead. Do not hesitate. They will not affect the prolactin levels. It is important that while we are correcting her prolactin levels, we are also restoring her fertility and also maintaining her normal gonadal function. Most importantly, if she is in the age group of 40 plus and she is amenorrheic and you find evidence of hypoestrogenism, please see to it that you prevent her osteoporosis. And if there is a presence of a pituitary tumor, correct her visual abnormalities, preserve the normal pituitary function, and see to it that the progression is stopped. Most of these pituitary tumors are managed with medical therapy. Surgeries and radiotherapy are used in very, very rare cases. Coming to the medical treatment, we have the dopamine agonist, cabergoline, and bromocriptine. So there was a very interesting question asked as to which of the two is better. Because cabergoline has a very long half-life, it can be administered once or maybe if the need be twice a week. So cabergoline is the preferred drug. And also because it is better tolerated and it has a better effect on the raised prolactin levels. It can be given once or twice a week, as I said, the need be. Bromocriptine has a very severe GI symptoms. So preferably advised at night, and in severe cases may also be given by the vaginal route. In addition to use of cabergoline for hyperprolactinemia, it is also given for inhibition of lactation, generally given on day 1 after the delivery, 2 tablets given start, and if the lactation is already established and you have to suppress it, then 0.25 milligram given 8 or 12 hourly for 2 days. My IVF friends sitting here would very well appreciate the effectiveness of cabergoline for the prevention of OHSS. Surgery indications for prolactinomas are only when the patient is unable to tolerate medical therapy, or the medical therapy is not making any effect, or if the prolactinoma is very big, it is causing severe pressure symptoms. Only in that case, a transfemoral surgery is indicated. Radiotherapy, like I mentioned, is rarely ever needed. It is when the tumor is not responding to medical therapy, the tumor is so big that the candidate is not fit for surgery, or if it is a malignant or a very aggressive tumor. Follow-up in the case of prolactinoma is done up to 2 to 4 years, and only once you find that there is no adenoma or an MRI and the prolactin levels are normal, that the drug therapy is discontinued. Now, this is something very interesting. During pregnancy, estrogen levels are high. We know that. Estrogen concomitantly increases the prolactin levels. In addition, there is hypertrophy and hyperplasia of the lactotropes. This is where the prolactin is synthesized and stored. The prolactin levels may go up to 400 nanograms in the 3rd trimester. So this is a diagrammatic representation. In pregnancy, we find high levels of progesterone and estrogen. But once the patient delivers, they come down to baseline till her next menstrual cycle starts. Prolactin, here we see, is high during pregnancy. Post-delivery, depending upon whether the patient is lactating or not. If she is not lactating, the levels come down to baseline within 2 to 3 weeks. But if she is lactating, the levels come down, but not up to the baseline till period of approximately 6 months. So, despite the elevated prolactin levels during pregnancy, lactation does not occur because though estrogen increases the prolactin levels, but it inhibits its action on the breast by blocking the receptor. It is only following delivery that estrogen levels come down and PRA level also come down, that lactation is initiated. And like I mentioned, if the patient is non-lactating, the levels of prolactin come down to baseline within 2 to 3 weeks, but 6 months if she's lactating. However, we find so many times that the lady continues to breastfeed her child for up to 2 years. How is that possible? Because the prolactin levels have come down to baseline. It is the act of suckling where the prolactin levels get increased again, and that stimulates milk production. Hyperprolactinemia in pregnancy. If the patient has come to you with infertility and you prescribe her dopamine agonist and she conceives, stop the drug. Though they are safe in pregnancy, there is no evidence of teratogenicity, no evidence of abortions or multiple pregnancy, they are to be stopped. However, certain conditions, if the prolactin levels are very high, or she has a prolactinoma, or that is macroadenoma, in that case, treatment may be continued. But while you put her on a dopamine agonist, please do not measure her serum prolactin levels because they will in any case be high. And also there is no need for a pituitary MRI or a visual field examination during pregnancy unless you are suspicious of evidence of a tumor growth. In any case, the patient is going to come to you monthly for her pregnancy checkup. That is the time you need to assess her for any evidence of increase in the size of the tumor or any evidence of pressure effect. This is the last part of my presentation. Certain key points. Hyperprolactinemia is present in 15% of all anovulatory women and 20% of amenorrhea where the cause is not known. 70% of all women with galactorrhea have prolactinemia, but if this galactorrhea is along with amenorrhea, then the incidence of hyperprolactinemia goes up to 90%. Estrogen stimulates prolactin release but blocks its action at the receptor in the breast. Majorly, there are 4 main causes of hyperprolactinemia: pregnancy, drug use, hypothyroidism, and a pituitary tumor. Physiological stimulation for prolactin release is breast and nipple palpation, exercise, stress, sleep, and I missed one point, our noon meals. Major symptoms of hyperprolactinemia are galactorrhea and amenorrhea. Amenorrhea is caused by suppression of GnRH release. Friends, remember, it is not essential to treat asymptomatic hyperprolactinemia, but a follow-up is a must. And while you're treating her for raised prolactin levels, you can safely prescribe her ERT or COCs as her complaint might be. When you get an MRI done, please do remember that she may come to you with an enlarged sella and an absent pituitary. Think on the lines of an empty sella syndrome. The natural history of all microadenomas is to stay the same size, with adverse menstrual problems resolving spontaneously in almost 1/4 of all patients. Not all hyperprolactinemic patients display galactorrhea, and galactorrhea can be seen with normal prolactin levels. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. It was a wonderful presentation. And we have a question in chat box. Can we take it?
Yes, yes.
There is one question from Dr. Raman Mahajan. Should pregnancy be terminated if patient was on treatment and conceived? The MRI shows an adenoma of 3 millimeter and prolactin level 52 start, and now it is 2.5.
Like I mentioned, even if she inadvertently has taken the medicine, that is safe in pregnancy, but once she conceives, the treatment needs to be stopped. In any case, the prolactin levels are barely above the normal.
Yes. Thank you, ma'am. Over to the chairpersons, Dr. Vanna, ma'am.
Yeah, a very nice deliberation, Dr. Deepti. It's a very common condition, and in patients who are amenorrheic, but we have to be very careful in patients who have osteoporosis, unusual osteopenia, not matching their age. We have to be on lookout these are the patients where we do not think about prolactin levels. So these are the places where we have to, prolactin per se has a very small half-life, that is around 25 to 50 minutes, and 75% is degraded by liver and 25% by kidney. So these disorders of these two organs also have to be kept in mind. And the rest, Dr. Deepti has given a very nice deliberation, and we have to work up a patient of hyperprolactinemia and not be very scared about it, because it does not cause, if it's a microadenoma less than 100 is the range, then it can be medically treated very, very easily, and not to worry. And as the question was asked, pregnancy need not be terminated, because as it is in OHSS, we are giving prolactin, bromocriptine as a treatment. So it's not an issue. The pregnancy can be continued, and the levels of prolactin are not measured in pregnancy because they're bounded. It's a hyperestrogenic state.
Dr. Renu.
Yeah. Deepti has extensively covered the topic, but one thing I want to say is during pregnancy, we don't need to measure the prolactin levels repeatedly. We should follow the patients clinically, and if prolactin levels still we feel that the symptoms are persisting, then the serum prolactin levels should be done 2 months after delivery. And if still there is a problem, then if MRI is required, repeat MRI should only be done once she stops breastfeeding, and 2 months after she stops breastfeeding the baby, the MRI can be done.
Thank you, Dr. Renu. I think Dr. Deepti, it was an extensive lecture, but very well done. So precise, with very, very important takeaway points. I think practically it was an extremely one, and I think you've touched the main topics of hypothyroidism. Along with that, we first need to treat the hypothyroidism. We do not need to treat the prolactin levels. The moment we start treating the hypothyroidism, automatically the prolactin levels tend to come all right. Secondly, in PCOS, I think we also is one condition where we do find the prolactin levels to be high. But again, if they're very high, only then we need to treat, because they are either on COCs, they are on this, so we do not need to specific if they're completely to be asymptomatic. Another thing that I also have learned, that whenever we do order MRIs or CT, they should always be with contrast, because we do not mention the contrast, and then we get the radiological people asking ki contrast karna hai ki nahi karna hai. So it is always to be written MRI or CT scan to be done with contrast. And in pregnancy, if you have to give in any one of them, it's the bromocriptine, it's not the carbamazepine. So in case you do need to give up in a pregnancy the drug, then the drug choice at that time is considered to be bromocriptine. So now for Madam, we need your order.
The patient
I can see Dr. Deepika Deka also joining the meeting.
Yes,
I think it had been absolutely an excellent presentation. And the only thing which I wish to add is that in ASHRAM in 2018 has said infertility patients who are a regular menstrual cycle don't need to get prolactin levels done at all. And secondly is that whenever there is a galactorrhea, it amounts to that in nearly 70% or 75% patients, there will be hyperprolactinemia. So there is no need to get the investigation done. Unless there are pressure symptoms and you find, then you definitely get it done. And she very rightly said, single level is good enough. When you find in a single level things are not working out, then only you get the multiple things which we normally used to get it done, and 3 to 4 hours after this thing, after she gets up. 4 things we must always remember: pregnancy, hypothyroidism, and hypothyroidism get a TSH and T4 levels also done. And third is always look for drugs. Always look for drugs. And lastly, it will be pituitary adenoma. I will just share 2 cases in my long career that patient had hyperprolactinemia. They presented finally with hypo. Now what has happened, this one patient was recently came to me from Nepal. She was a medical student, and because of her problems, she had left medicine. There was this prolactinemia, and it was about 22 millimeter in size. But, on investigation, they found that there were vacuoles there, and they said this particular thing is not functioning. And the prolactin levels were 1 or 2. That was it. And this lady presented with amenorrhea, secondary amenorrhea. And the parents were only worried about the amenorrhea part of it. So from, she went to many medical colleges, and finally it was hypo. And this is what it is that, because she's a young girl, tomorrow she might think about having an IVF pregnancy. So she has to require a hormonal supplementation. So this rarely it can happen. And as for the surgery is concerned, those days are gone of surgery, because we have seen when we were younger, doing a post-graduation, not many patients after surgery used to have a CSF leaking out from their nose and things like that. Those days are gone. The similar patient also, whenever you have an hyperprolactinoma, always try to look at FSH, LH levels very closely. And sometimes you find that, there can be secondary features of hypo, which you at times miss out. And very rightly you said, pregnancy, you do not require any supplementation, because as such, the levels are high. So I think these are the few remarks which I was not very clear about the macroprolactin, which you wanted to highlight in asymptomatic hyperprolactinemia. Dr. Deepti, you can explain again. It is only asymptomatic hyperprolactinemia that you can find macroprolactin. What is it?
Yes, ma'am. So when you have a patient with raised prolactin levels, but when you do her investigations, you find no clue, no cause, but the prolactin levels are high, like idiopathic. In that case, you get a repeat test done, and this time tell the lab people to pre-treat it with polyethylene glycol. So what happens is that these macroprolactinemias are precipitated, they are removed, and then you get the actual prolactin levels which are normal.
Madam, one question I would just for my clarification. Suppose we have a galactoria patient who's got a prolactin normal and thyroid is normal. Do we treat these particular patients with the bromocriptine or cabergoline, or we just leave them? Madam, you're muted.
When you find that the patient has got gross hypothyroidism, gross means that the TSH levels are more than 10 are there. You will definitely treat these patients, give it for a month. Thyroid treatment has a magical effect, and you'll find this will disappear. In case if it does not disappear, say patient is not, their thyroid levels are normal, and you find a galactoria in such patients. I have seen you start them on cabergoline without getting any investigation done. A month later, you'll find everything disappears. And as a routine, I give them for 3 months. I will like Dr. Deepika Deka to make any comments.
Madam, you're muted.
Please unmute yourself. Deka ma'am, unmute yourself.
Yeah. Thank you for inviting me to talk. That's what I was saying, that if there is amenorrhea, there is oligomenorrhea, then only you really need to do the prolactin levels. And I have had cases where we have found very large tube prolactinomas, and they had to be treated during surgery, during pregnancy with surgery. So, that is also an option along with bromocriptine. Sometimes, especially if there are eye symptoms, you really need to do the surgery as well. So that's also another thing.
Thank you, ma'am.
Dr. Jyoti, you just, one second. You just asked that if patient has galactoria and her TSH and prolactin levels are high, in
normal.
that case,
They are normal.
so they are normal. So when they are normal, you get a detailed menstrual history. If she's not oligomenoric or not amenorrheic, she has regular menses, you just need to observe her. That is what I mentioned in that particular graph where nipple discharge is there with normal prolactin levels. But if she has irregular menstrual cycle, then you need to get an MRI done.
If the patient has got galactoria and her TSH and prolactin levels are normal, you don't need to treat her?
No, ma'am. You get a menstrual history. If that is normal, you just need to reassure her, but you have to keep a follow-up. You have to keep following her up. You just can't let her go.
You can take it from me. You can take it from me. You treat her with cabergoline and call her in a month's time. Her galactoria will disappear, even if she has got a normal thing. And there invariably I give the treatment for 12 weeks, and that is the treatment. Because अगर आप नहीं treat करोगे, वो किसी और के पास जाएगी.
It has to be treated. It has to be treated.
And Dr. Deepti, what is the follow-up that we do? Suppose we put her on cabergoline for a patient with high prolactin level. What is the follow-up of when do we do a prolactin again? How do we follow these patients?
After a month again, after a month again. So, like I said, you don't chase the prolactin levels. You have to see what has she come to you for. Just galactoria? Or is it infertility? Or is it menstrual cycle disturbance? So you need to treat all those factors also. So you do the prolactin levels after a month. If they are normal, continue with the same drug. Majority of these women within a matter of 3 weeks start ovulating and they become pregnant. So that's it. You achieve what she wanted. And irregular cycles, in any case, you will be putting her on COCs.
No, but how long do we give bromocriptine before we tend to stop? 3 months, 6 months, 2 years?
That depends. What is your
About
target?
90, 100.
That depends upon your target. What are you chasing? Ma'am, yes.
Doctor, as far as hyperprolactinemia more than 100 is concerned, more than 100, it is invariably something here.
Microadenoma.
If it is related to drugs, it will vary between 30 to 100. That is usually the drugs are there.
Yes.
And you can find in the TSH level, when the TSH levels are raised, you can find levels up to 50 also you can find. So from the levels, you can definitely make out.
Yes.
Wherever there is microadenoma, these people require therapy for a long time, And a minimum dose has to be done, and you will find it will be invariably such patients, if you stop the treatment, again she will start having a problem. So on their own, whether Shada Jain or whether Deepti Nath, they forget about it, they know ye dawai to band karni nahi hai. So they come to know on their own that ye is dawai ko band nahi karna. So the आप कितना भी उनको करने की कोशिश करेंगे, because if she has gone 3-4 times, she has gone to neurology department, things like that, and she had to restart the treatment. She understands herself that मेरे brain में tumor है, उसको अगर ठीक से हमने small size में रखना है और बढ़ने नहीं देना, तो हमें दवाई लेनी पड़ेगी.
So, madam, हम तो first visit जैसे हुई patient की, and जैसे Jyoti is saying that she's not having thyroid, she's not having prolactin levels are normal. Normally, we reassure them at least for 1 month. You are not going to, with the conscious effort, you are not going to think about the breast sister. You are not going to even touch your breast, and you come back after 1 month. If it is not getting relief, only then I am going to put you on capgolling. Not on the first slide we put on the capgolling कि दूसरा दे देगा. So normally what I do is we reassure that there's nothing to worry about this thing. And it is idiopathic also, and you forget about, and you do it like you don't even think of it. It is there. Just stop stimulating your nipples, anything, because until the young girls comes after lactation has been stopped for 6 months, they come with this little bit of discharge, and there's nothing has been found of that. What I think.
He has very clearly said the discharge, which is not has got milk knowledge, those people are treated very differently. Patient has got galactoria, is never idiopathic. You need to treat.
Ma'am, patient always wants treatment for that, otherwise they are as such disturbed, and after 1 month, 4-5 tablets के बाद में ही patient gets well.
8 tablets दे दो, patient ठीक हो जाएगी.
What Dr. Dekar says.
Dr. Dekar, what do you have to say?